Making sure your D&D sessions don't ever become a total snooze fest starts with your session prep. Today, we're going to be diving into how to prep sessions that are exciting and funky fresh without having to spend a literal 5 billion hours on it. No, it's not an exaggeration, I timed it. And so if you've already watched my previous videos in this series, you're already equipped with the knowledge of what excites your players and with world building that they'll love, because it came straight from their backstories. Now we're going to take said knowledge and turn it into quick, easy session prep that will keep your adventurers hooked and moving in exciting directions. So let's break it down step by step so you can prep for a session that's fun, engaging, and super flexible without all of the stress. The way I prep is based on Mike Shea of Sly Flourish's 8-step system. It is more or less just his system, very small tweaks. But if you haven't yet, go check out his Lazy DM series. I highly recommend it. His work is a huge part of why I always feel super confident running a lot of improv the way I do during sessions. So trust me, you'll thank me later. But before I dive into the nitty-gritty of the session, I do one key thing. I review my previous session's notes and my player characters. So at the end of each session, we do stars and wishes for my campaigns. If you're unfamiliar, that's where players tell me what they loved about the session and what they'd like to see in the future. So this is their chance to grab me by the face and yell, "This is what I want." So if you do something similar, make sure you pay attention to this feedback. But this isn't only about what the players want, it's also about how their previous choices influence this game world, and what that means for these future sessions. And so I like to let these ideas percolate for a bit. This part of my session prep is usually just shower thoughts that I've yelled into a voice memo over the week. And a very good reason to consider re-looking over some of your own early notes is because you never know what ideas you had or which details might pop out to you. For example, for this video, I was looking over my pre-campaign notes, and I totally forgot that I started this campaign because I was playing around with solo microscope tools. I didn't even finish doing that solo build game. I just got so excited about the ideas that I was coming up with that I immediately went and started recruiting players for this campaign. But today, we're incorporating a tiny flippin' little side note I had in there that is pure gold. And for this video, these random notes are nicely assembled in their own little notes toggle. In reality, they're usually in bullet points at the bottom of my previous session notes or in my Cocoon Weaver voice app. They're kind of all over the place. So for you who think I'm hyper organized, sorry to disappoint you. But after this, I do a quick review of the PCs, making sure to think of ways to either include backstory elements, character goals and opportunities, or even just really cool combat possibilities based on what I know about them. Editing Stephanie here. I had an ADHD space out and forgot to mention why reviewing your PCs is actually one of the key parts that keeps your game from being boring. You see, whether we like it or not, the most interesting part of our games has very little to do with us as DMs. For our players, the thing they're most likely to remember about our sessions is if they did something cool, or if they had an interesting choice to agonize over. Players don't particularly care about our world building outside of their own lens. And this isn't narcissistic, it's not an act of thought, it's just human nature. Which is also exactly why we as DMs are biased towards thinking our games are so great because of our world building and our ideas. We really love us. There's even studies about how if we're listening to a recording of our own voice and know it's our voice, we'll rate it as unattractive. But if we don't know it's ours, we actually really like the sound of it. Like I said, human nature. And that's exactly why this should actually be freeing. It's why in these videos about my style of campaign prep, we've focused specifically on the players and their contributions to this world building. And it's why we're continuing to do it throughout session prep. So keep in mind, the most exciting thing to your players is them. That's all. And starting my planning with this session notes PC review, just like a quick 5-minute review, is how I can ensure that every session is rich with opportunities for awesome moments. I'm setting up moments that allow everyone to shine, whether in combat, roleplay, or exploration. Once I review everything, the most valuable part of prep is coming up with your strong start. This is going to be what sets the tone for your whole session, so don't waste it with, you walk into a tavern, unless your players really, really, really love that stuff. Otherwise, things like that are a no-go if you want to keep your players engaged right from the beginning. I start nearly every session in media res, so that means jumping straight into the action or into something important. For example, if they're meeting someone, they're already sitting there listening to their mysterious story. Or if it's supposed to be something like a tavern brawl. Maybe you start the session with the giant half-orc dumping their ale on the halfling PC's head. You can honestly even just start describing the chaos erupting around the party as a bar stool goes sailing over their heads and the tavern goers are just a tangle of flying fists. Jump right into it. But today's session for me is not action-packed. We left on a bit of a downbeat cliffhanger. The PCs couldn't convince their patron Boris to send them on an expedition to go find the Luminara crystal, while also knowing that Malik, the antagonist of the story, is about to send a group out himself. Bummer. So for this, I get to incorporate a backstory element from a player, but I could also tie in PC goals or even just know I'm starting something that makes it more likely for a PC to use their special abilities. Like if we have a rogue thief, I might get to do something where they use their second story work ability, but that's why reviewing things is a great way to start prep. You just automatically have these types of things at the top of your mind. So in my opener, it's going to be the morning after their failure. They're going to be licking their wounds over greasy breakfast at a hole-in-the-wall tavern they frequent called the Dragon's Teeth. Overnight though, one of the players has a flash of memory where they remembered the name that they saw engraved on the expedition journal they just stole, Edric Lorne. They remembered that was the name of an old man that lived right outside the commune they grew up in. And this approach gives players options. They can follow this new lead, they can confront Boris, or they can convince Callie, his granddaughter, to head the expedition without his blessing, or they can go team up with Malik, like one player wanted to and everyone else is trying to convince him not to. But you can see the start isn't a forced path. It's designed for them to choose their own direction. But if they have all these choices, how are we supposed to prep for these vast amount of options? That's where the next part comes in. The secret to keeping a flexible but fun session lies in decentralizing your prep. Okay, what do I mean by that? In simple terms, it's about not locking the players into specific decisions. You want to keep things flexible so that even if they go off track, you can still give them important information they need to move things forward. That's where secrets and clues come in. They give you the freedom to let players follow their own paths, while still guiding them towards the bigger picture. If they don't go exactly where we expected, no problem. I can still get the key information to them, just in a different way. So for today's session, I'm prepping around 8 to 10 secrets and clues. Some of them are going to be tied to the main quest, but others might have to do with PC goals or backstories or group side quest interests. And these clues can show up wherever they decide to go. Maybe they pick up a piece of paper on the floor, maybe they overhear something at a tavern. Any which way they go, these secrets get to be in play no matter what. And it can be tempting to get this information all out to the players as quickly as possible, that way they don't miss anything. But you shouldn't give them all of this information at once. Don't word vomit this at them. Part of the fun of D&D is piecing things together, acting on certain information, and then changing course as you find out more, stumbling across game-changing things along the way. That's not to say intentionally mislead your players, but the more they feel like they're unraveling the mysteries of your universe, the more exciting a session becomes. So let's build out the ones I'm using for this session. First, one of the things I like to do really quick is check over my major story path points. That way I can see what I need to do to propel the story forward. So right now we're working on getting the expedition started. So they either need to find a way to convince Boris to send them, or find another way to seek the Luminara crystal out without him. Luckily, we have some ideas for this. So we're going to start with secrets and clues that further this overarching quest. the things bringing them closer to finding the Luminara crystal. So for this session, the big bomb drop is going to be that Edric Lorne purposely sabotaged the mission with Boris. Talking guys. So basically this is going to be news that this guy was part of Boris's mission and almost everyone died except for them, and it's because of Edric. This is from the little piece of information I found in my pre-planning notes, was this little bit about someone actually knowing about the Luminara crystal and being part of generations of people that were protecting it, people that didn't want it found. So this other part's going to be connected to it. The surface world is real, and generations of secret keepers have been obscuring this knowledge. And so this isn't part of it. Sometimes I make little subnotes to myself. We're gonna say why this has been lost to the sands of time. We're better off not knowing and accepting life as it is. I think that Edric is so far removed from the original person that he doesn't quite know everything. He was just doing what he was raised to do. What they do know, and what can be another secret, is the crystal has powers that would reconnect them in some way to the surface world. So this is something I've always thought, but who knows what other things it's capable of? What sort of things might Malik want it for? So we have 3 so far. 4, I think Boris might have previously known where it was. So yeah, Boris once believed the Luminara was in a specific cave system. He sent multiple teams, none returned, so they marked it off. He was right. So I think Edric turned them around on purpose, maybe misread maps, sabotaged tunnels. We'll add that in really quick. But this is crossed off the map, so Malik might not know where the Luminara actually is if he believes that Boris was wrong. So that's another one. Malik does know about Edric's journal. One of his little rival team members was there when they found it. So Malik wants Edric's journal, was looking for documents from past Boris expeditions to add to his collection, willing to pay or take by force. I don't think my PCs will take money for this, but you never know. Next, I'll go over things I can incorporate from our Stars and Wishes. And not everything in a Stars and Wishes thing is immediately actionable, so sometimes I'll add them to a broader list, if you noticed in my little organization thing. And so for this one, they really, really want a chance to talk to Dr. Thorne. I don't think she's gonna show up in this session, but it is noted. But maybe they can still learn more about her and Professor Selko's involvement. This professor previously experimented on students and was exiled from the city. So they previously received word that they were somewhat of rivals, but I don't think I fed them information that Dr. Thorne used to be Selko's assistant back in the day. So we're gonna add that. They're layered, they're nuanced. And so this is just to illustrate the concept of decentralizing information, but in my mind, I imagine Edric telling the group this fun fact about Dr. Thorne. But hopefully you can see that it can easily come from anywhere. If they don't end up talking about this, it's not a big deal. They can overhear someone else talking about this. They can come across an experiment log co-published by the two, and so on. And so if you think you'd struggle with this idea of decentralizing, one of the exercises I think can be useful is thinking about how each of your PCs might get information. Would they intimidate someone? Would they eavesdrop? Would they go seek out something to read and research? And then you want to reverse engineer the possibilities from there. So what kind of books would you find that information in? who would be talking about these people, etc., etc. So once I have this part done, I start filling out the rest of the secrets and clues with backstory links or PC side goals, that sort of thing. We're gonna add strange creatures have made their way to these outskirts that Riptar's commune is on. So I'll probably need monster stat blocks, maybe be able to tell them a little bit about what this thing is, decide if these are more of Professor Selko's experiments or something else, maybe something related to that cryptid mythic monster that I talked about in previous videos. And then I think my final one is going to be about this brooch that one of my PCs is obsessed with. It used to belong to Boris, but Malik has it for reasons unknown. Thief! But the crystal shards from the Luminara grow brighter the closer they are to it, as if they call out to each other. So maybe Boris actually got the brooch from Edric. So did Malik steal it, or did Boris throw it out? Was it too painful a memory of his friend? And so that's it. This part is super easy. On average, it probably takes me about 10 minutes without trying to speedrun it. But the important thing is to remember that with these secrets and clues, they can be discovered in so many different ways. The important thing is to remember that the PCs now have the freedom to find them organically, and that's what makes it feel real and exciting. I don't always use this step, but it can be super helpful to just keep things organized when there are certain events that you do expect to happen. Like usually closer to the start of a session, you can predict a little bit more what your PCs are gonna do. So let's say you know combat's likely, or that they're planning to break into a specific building. This is when I preemptively write short scene ideas, and I primarily do this to make sure that I'm adding variety in my sessions. So for today, I expect the party to explore Riptar's commune, and so I'll write a few lines about that. I also know they're probably about to encounter some Dryderlings. It's been a second since they've seen combat, and I want my pugilists to get to show off their Hand of Dread subclass for the first time. Side note, if you are unfamiliar with Benjamin Huffman's pugilist class, I link to it below as always, but I love offering this one as an option for my players. But I'll jot down a few notes on what the little baby Dryders look like. They're teenagers, they'd hate me saying that. But also how they'll behave. And so as they head to the commune, I might write a few lines to remind me to describe how the city changes as they head to the outskirts, through the winding trails, between shacks, as they go through the outskirts of the city. Inner district to outer gets significantly more poverty-ridden. So they'll be moving from nice big mansions to regular houses to apartments to ramshackle shacks. But at the very outskirts, they're going to come across a border fortified with broken spears and sharpened rocks. And this is going to be the protection for the commune, because in their backstory for Riptar, they talked about it was actually very idyllic, even though they didn't really have much. So inside is going to be very clean. I think they're going to have small wood homes, going to be able to see the glowing hearths, people doing chores together. And to emphasize this idealism they imagine here, I'm going to say that the center of the commune, small park with old suncatcher orbs that had been discarded, glowing faintly like the dying light of a sunset. And there's going to be children playing. And I might write a few lines about going to Edric's house on the outskirts of this commune. So outside the gates, smaller home, no smoke coming from chimney. I'm writing that because I'm curious to see if they'll just try and break in or if they will knock first. I want to give it the illusion of nobody being home. I'm also going to put stacks of wood outside, folded pelts. I want it to be obvious that the community's trying to take care of him, even if he's not taking care of himself. And I know at some point they're likely to have an encounter with these Dryders like I talked about, so I'll write a few notes there. They're gonna drop down from the stalactites. Again, this is an underground city, maybe A few crawl over the house if they're by Edric's still, or crawl over stalagmites. I like to imagine them dual-wielding weapons, kind of smirking menacingly. And they look similar to the spider folk that my players have seen in the city until they notice the very large spider torsos, because my spider folk don't have those. Ours are more humanoid in the city. And like I said, these are going to be driderlings, youngins, but I'll flesh that out more once I get to the stat blocks. And so, like I said, if you do write scene ideas, remember these aren't set in stone. Get ready to scrap them if players decide to go do something else. They can be helpful when it comes to remembering things you wanted to describe about something, and they can help keep a session flowing smoothly between transitions, but they're definitely not a necessity, sometimes just a nice to have. We're already almost done. The last few steps are where I fleshed out specific things like locations and NPCs. And I really want these to feel alive and interactive. I have a tendency to keep my location details short and sweet, trying to add in features that spark curiosity and encourage players to explore or ask questions. For the commune, I'm gonna add the Veil Current, and that's a small but active stream that has a faint blue aura that is said to be touched by divine magic and has healing properties. So they have their fancy stream, they also have the Sentinel Stone. And so I wanted a reason that this place is more idyllic than the other sad and scary places around it. So this large boulder on one side of the commune pulses with ancient magic, evidenced by the small runes carved around the base. It's rumored by the commune to help keep monsters and dark creatures at bay. But for how long will it work? I'm also going to copy down my notes from my scene about Edric's house to here. I'm going to add notes to mention how sparse it is. 1 twin bed, 1 small wooden desk, no art, no plush furniture, no seats for guests. He doesn't even have a table. And this is because Edric has essentially spent the rest of his life punishing himself for the way that he betrayed his friend. Good. I might even add some notes for Malik's house, maybe just for like the exterior entryway and sitting room though, just in case my players surprise me by going to his house today instead of following the lead I think they will follow. So outside the house, built inside a large stalactite that hangs over the city. The really rich people live in stalactites, little hollowed out stalactites. I want it to be Art Deco inspired, so exterior, gleaming, polished black marble with silver veins. So fancy. And then I might make some notes about darning windows, sharp geometric lines, Art Deco motifs, and what? So they have to like climb up there, so I'm gonna say stairs, swirling vines carved in ornate arches they pass through, soft glow of bioluminescent plants lighting their way. And these are just to give me ideas to describe as they make their way to his house, making sure they understand just the level of grand it is. And so I'm gonna do the same with the entryway really quick. We'll just bloop. Okay, cool, awesome. I usually, like I said, have a pretty good read on what my players are gonna do, but they still surprise you from time to time, and that's the way I enjoy it. But after that, we're gonna move on to NPCs. And this particular campaign isn't as NPC heavy as some of my other ones are. So I just have been copying and pasting NPC templates where I need them. I usually actually have a database of NPCs. That way, all I have to do is use a linked view of an existing database to have all of the NPCs at my fingertips all of the time. And if you want a full Notion 101 for DMs type of tutorial where I cover this stuff explicitly, Let me know in the comments below. There's a ton of general Notion tutorials on YouTube, so I wasn't sure if this would be useful for you guys or not. But some people have been requesting it in the previous videos, so I thought I'd ask. And also, if this campaign building 101 series has been helpful to you, please make sure to like and subscribe below. That way the tubes that be will show you my face again in the future. But for my NPCs, I use a variation of Justin Alexander's NPC template to keep things simple. As always, links below. But I just add a few key details like their desires and connections and a few notes on their mannerisms or character inspiration so that I know how to roleplay them. And I want to be able to just glance at these. So for this session, I know I'm probably going to need Edric, Riptar's sister, and a few random townsfolk. The random townsfolk, I'm just gonna put a list of NPC names at the bottom because they'll almost definitely never come up again. If any of them are really becoming magnets for the players, I'll make notes about them as we go. These are new NPCs. I haven't used them before. And so like I said in my world building video, I don't actually flesh these out before moments like now. I actually didn't think we'd ever visit the commune that Riptar grew up in. And Edric didn't exist before 2 sessions back. He wasn't planned. And he sure as hell didn't live in the commune the session I invented him. Staying flexible with my prep while being knowledgeable about my players and the PCs that they built lets me create these really cool moments for them while staying true to my vision of the worlds that I'm building. Edric has become a potential way to move the story forward despite the party's initial failure to convince Boris to send them on this expedition. If I didn't think that these PCs would even go to this commune, why would I waste all of that time beforehand fleshing out this location and Riptar's sister and the other NPCs? I just need to know about their existence so I can utilize them when it makes sense. Because honestly, worst comes to worst, I can always create things on the fly. But I don't want to spend 5 months building out things that won't ever see the light of day. That is not a great use of my time. Okay, so for Edric, we're gonna make him like Yoda. He's gonna be a grumpy old man Yoda. He's a self-exile. He's not gonna talk like Yoda. His appearance, he's a dwarf, short dwarf, salt and pepper beard. He's old, so it's really long, drags along the ground, it's hunched, he's frail, and again, self-pitying, self-punishing, dressed in rags, basically. Everything's just kind of falling apart, holes, that sort of thing. Then I do roleplay notes for myself. And so I suck at accents. It's not my thing. I will try someday to get better at them. Not at the top of my priority list, honestly. But it's still important to be able to communicate character differences. So I usually do things like add little sayings, catchphrases, and mannerisms. I do a lot of mannerisms. I'm a very physical person, very expressive, so that's the way I tend to communicate character roleplay traits. So I'm gonna have him say a lot to Harumfer, because he's a little old man. I think his ears are also going. So the PCs, if they start talking too long or if they say something really emotional and heartwarming, I'm just gonna have him yell, "Speak up!" at them. He's gonna be real grumpy. And as far as physicality goes, I'm gonna have him do kind of like the half-closed nod sort of thing, nod off while they're talking. Then I do factions, desires, connections. And so he's connected to Boris, his faction, he's a protector of the crystal. I did name generators earlier. I really suck at naming things. Oh, yeah, we went with the Orator of the Hollow Truth. Hollow. His words are hollow. His desire is to atone for his betrayal. And by the way, don't be afraid to keep some generator links at the bottom of your notes. Again, you can just kind of make a template and copy and paste this stuff. But if you need ones for NPC names or common magic items or shops or something that you just suck at coming up with on the spot, it's really great to have them at your fingertips. I try not to have too many pigeonette couchertons running around the place. Next we have Riptar's sister. I need to make sure to ask for a name in case there is one. Otherwise, we're gonna go with Zeta. For this person, they're gonna be Vi from Arcane meets Kim Possible. I want them to have cool older sister vibes. They're a kobold, because this player's a kobold. They have, let's see, dark green scales with bands of leather braided around her horns. It's gonna be like small, petite, little kobold, but with a really, really big grin. Roleplay notes again. Maybe I'll have her like slap the table every time she laughs and make a lot of like big arm gestures. I don't really have characters that do a lot of things like that right now. And she'll have like little catchphrases. Like I said, she's easy breezy, cool cover girl. But I'm gonna have her say things like, piece of cake, told ya, easy. She just takes a lot of things in stride. And then, again, factions, desires, connections. Zeta wants safety for the commune and Riptar. Simple goals. And her connections are Riptar and Edric. So she can bring them to meet Edric. I'm also just gonna copy and paste my Malik and team ones from the previous session. Like I said, databases are the most efficient way to do this, but we're being techno-lazy right now. Again, I don't think they'll interact with them, but I'd rather be prepared. I could also copy and paste Boris and Callie, but I actually don't need notes for those two anymore, so I try not to clutter things up. Sometimes I think having the visual clutter actually makes DMs panic more than not having everything right at your fingertips. And so, last but not least, we have monster stat blocks and potential items to give players. I don't have these two every session either, but today I do. For stat blocks, if I'm using them as is or pretty close to, I'll just paste images of the stat block right here. But today we're going to be adjusting the Drider stat block to be Driderlings, youngins who are hungry to prove themselves, but are a little bit toned down compared to the real deal stat block. These PCs are not ready for that. So poof, here's our adjusted stat block. I want it to be medium hard. There's gonna be 4 of them. I'm leaning a little bit more towards hard. So I went with HP that puts them more at the CR1 half, but their damage is a little higher. Not a lot, just a couple points. I have some extra squishes there. I also added the web spell for them because I think it could be cool and fun depending on how the fight's going. It might not get used, but I specifically really hate stat blocks like the Drider where they have something like Web Walker but don't make webs of their own. Could just be me, but I think it's a lot cooler if the spiders have webs. Also, they're gonna be rappelling from the ceiling, so they have webs. And as for loot today, it's gonna be a little more basic. 2 sessions ago, they leveled up and got some pretty big loot. So I think the Driderlings will have some poison darts they might drop if they flee. I Dream of Genie Snap. And then maybe a silk net that's super strong and sticky that can be used as a one-time trap. But this is it. It's really that simple. Keep your prep light and focused on frameworks. Let your players lead the way. Prep doesn't need to be overwhelming. It's about creating scaffolding that allows you to react to what your players do. So give this method a try for your next session. Again, if you want an in-depth look at this type of framework, Mike Shea literally wrote the book on it, so I've linked to it below. And then let me know in the comments how it goes, or feel free to share your own session prep tips. Also, again, if you're interested in a Notion for DMs tutorial, drop a comment below. I am happy to do something like that if people are interested in it. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out these videos next.